You know what scares the life out of most new riders? Not the highway, not even leaning into a corner. It's that slow speed U turn. You know the one. Cars watching, riders watching, and you're just praying you don't tip the bike over like a rookie. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be scary. In fact, there's one weird U turn trick almost nobody talks about. And once you know it, you'll pull off U turns like you've been riding for decades. Hey guys, Matthew here from Autozium. Today we're going to break down the U turn, why it's so hard, what you've been doing wrong, and the weird little trick that makes it feel smooth, controlled, and way less stressful. You know what makes the U turn such a terrifying move for new riders? It's not because it's technically the hardest maneuver in the world. Heck, racers drag knee at 120 miles per hour through corners way harder than a U turn. The problem with the U turn is that it exposes you. You can fake confidence on the highway. You can twist the throttle, feel the rush, and look like you're in control. But a U turn, that's the moment when the spotlight's on you, cars behind you, maybe a couple riders watching, and suddenly that big, beautiful bike feels like a 1,000-pound anchor that wants to fall over at the slightest twitch. At slow speeds, motorcycles behave completely differently than when they're rolling fast. At 40, 50, or 60 miles per hour, the gyroscopic effect of the wheels gives you balance. You barely have to think about keeping the bike upright. It practically balances itself. But when you slow to walking pace, all that stability disappears. The bike feels heavy, the bars get twitchy, and every tiny mistake feels amplified. The natural reaction? Most new riders tense up. They stare at the pavement right in front of their tire, hoping that if they just keep it smooth and don't look stupid, they'll somehow make it. But here's the reality. When you stare down, when you stiffen your arms, and when you roll the throttle too timidly, the bike actually becomes harder to control. What felt like playing it safe turns into a fight. You wobble, you stall, and if you're unlucky, you tip. The truth is, the U turn is a mental battle just as much as a physical one. You feel exposed, judged, and pressured. But that's also why mastering it is such a huge confidence booster. Once you can flip that bike around in a tight space like it's second nature, suddenly you feel like you can handle anything. The U turn stops being this dreaded monster and becomes just another tool in your riding kit. So, why does it feel so hard? Because slow speed robs you of the natural stability you're used to. Because your instincts push you to do exactly the wrong thing. And because the setting, cars watching, riders watching, magnifies the nerves. But once you understand the mechanics, once you break down what's really happening, that scary U turn transforms from the hardest move in riding into one of the most satisfying. Let's talk about the clutch, the unsung hero of the slow speed world. Most riders treat it like an on off switch in, out, done. But that's like trying to play a piano by only smashing the keys with your fists. Sure, you'll make noise, but you won't make music. At slow speeds, your clutch isn't just a lever, it's a dimmer switch for power. That middle ground, the friction zone, that's your gold mine. It's where the bike is half engaged, half free, and it gives you the ability to bleed just the right amount of power into the rear wheel. You're not just riding the throttle, you're painting with it. Little slips, little feeds, just enough to keep the bike alive and balanced. Now, here's the mistake new riders make. They avoid slipping the clutch because they think it's bad for the bike. They worry about burning it out, or they've been told to keep the clutch either fully in or fully out. But let me tell you something. The clutch was built to slip. That's its job. The friction zone is designed for exactly these moments, and it can handle it way more than you think. When you avoid using the clutch, what happens? You either dump too much throttle and the bike lunges, or you roll too little and the bike sputters and stalls. Either way, your control is gone. But when you feather that clutch, just ride the edge, you suddenly unlock this hidden balance. The bike smooths out. It responds like it's reading your mind. Think about it like this. When you're walking a big dog on a leash, you don't either yank it all the way back or let it bolt. You keep tension. You guide. The clutch is that leash. It's what lets you guide the bike instead of just hanging on for the ride. So the next time you're practicing U turns, stop thinking of the clutch as a binary switch. Treat it like a dimmer. Feed in power gradually. Hold it in that sweet spot. You'll be amazed how much lighter and more manageable the bike feels. The friction zone isn't just your friend, it's your secret weapon. Now, here's where things get counterintuitive using the brake while you're giving throttle. Sounds insane, right? Like trying to push the gas and the brake in a car at the same time. But on a motorcycle, at slow speeds, it's a game changer. See, when you gently apply the rear brake while keeping steady throttle and clutch slip, you're not actually fighting yourself. What you're doing is adding stability. The bike squats just a little, the suspension compresses, and suddenly the bike feels planted, like it's glued to the ground instead of teetering like a circus act. The rear brake also slows down the floppiness of the handlebars. At walking speed, the front end can feel twitchy, like it wants to snap too far when you lean. But that tiny drag from the rear brake damps out those quick, jerky movements. It calms everything down. You get this smooth, controlled flow instead of a nervous wobble. Here's another bonus. The rear brake frees up your brain. Without it, you're trying to perfectly balance throttle and clutch, which can feel overwhelming when you're nervous. But with the rear brake dragging just slightly, you suddenly have more margin for error. Too much throttle, the brake reins it in. Too little clutch, the brake steadies you until you catch it. It's like training wheels for your balance, except nobody can see it. Most new riders resist this because it feels unnatural. Why would I hit the brake while I'm trying to move forward? But once you try it, once you feel that planted stability, you'll never go back. It's like unlocking cheat mode in a video game. So remember, clutch, throttle, and rear brake. That's your holy trinity for slow speed control. On their own, they're useful. But when you blend them together, that's when the U turn stops being a white knuckle struggle and starts feeling like a smooth, confident dance. If there's one rule that makes or breaks your U turn, it's this: the bike goes where you look. It sounds like some Jedi nonsense, but it's 100% true. Your eyes are the steering wheel. And if you're staring at the ground or the curb, guess where you're about to end up? Smack on the ground or riding straight into the curb. The problem is that your instincts betray you. When you're nervous, your brain wants to laser focus on the threat. You see the pavement you don't want to fall on, so you stare at it. You see the curb you're afraid of clipping, so you lock your vision on it. But your bike doesn't know don't hit that. It only knows go where the eyes go. So what happens? You steer yourself right into the very thing you were trying to avoid. That's why U turn training always sounds like an exaggeration. Turn your head. Look all the way over your shoulder. Instructors sound like broken records, but it's because this rule is the difference between success and failure. You've got to commit, not just a little glance, not just a peek out of the corner of your eye. I'm talking full head crank, chin over your shoulder, eyes locked on the exit of the turn. And here's the wild part. When you finally force yourself to do it, the bike almost feels like it turns itself. You're leaned in, clutch slipping, rear brake dragging, and suddenly the bars are following that gaze like magic. Your whole body follows your eyes, and the motorcycle falls in line without a fight. If you don't believe me, try this exercise in a parking lot. Set up two cones about 20 feet apart. Ride up to one, start your U turn. And the second your front wheel passes the first cone, whip your head around and glue your vision to the exit point. Don't let yourself look anywhere else. Even if your brain screams, look down, force yourself to stay locked on that spot. 9 times out of 10, the bike will track perfectly through the turn. Think of it like throwing a ball. If you stare at your hand instead of the target, the throw is wild. But when you focus on the spot you want that ball to land, suddenly everything lines up. Motorcycles work the same way. Your arms, your balance, even your throttle hand, they all take cues from your eyes. So if you've been fighting U-turns, ask yourself this: where have you been looking? The ground, the fear, or the path you want to take? Shift that gaze, exaggerate it, and you'll unlock one of the most powerful riding tools there is. Eyes lead, bike follows. Simple rule. Total game changer. Here's the hard truth. You don't get good at U turns by hoping they'll just happen when you need them. You get good by putting in the boring, sweaty, slightly embarrassing work in an empty parking lot. And yeah, I know, parking lot practice isn't sexy. Nobody brags about spending their Saturday weaving around faded white lines. But you know what is sexy? Whipping a flawless U turn in traffic while other riders are fumbling. So let's break it down. The parking lot is your laboratory. It's where you take all the pieces throttle, clutch, rear brake, and eye control and stitch them into muscle memory. And the beauty of it is you don't need fancy gear. Cones are great, but you can just as easily use water bottles, tennis balls cut in half, or even the painted lane markings that are already there. Start simple wide circles, steady throttle, clutch slipping just enough to keep the bike smooth. Don't even worry about making it tight yet. The goal here is comfort. You're teaching your body that the bike doesn't have to feel like it's falling over at slow speed. Once that starts to click, gradually tighten those circles down. Push yourself to make the radius smaller and smaller until you're carving U-turns inside 2 lanes. That's the magic number. If you can turn your bike around without crossing more than 2 standard lanes, you're golden. And here's the kicker. Repetition is everything. One practice session won't make you a pro. It's the grind that pays off. 10 minutes every ride before you head home. 5 laps around the lot on Sunday morning. It doesn't sound like much, but stack it up over a month and your confidence skyrockets. Another tip, mix it up. Don't just practice in ideal conditions. Try U-turns uphill, downhill, or with a bit of gravel underfoot. Simulate the real-world messiness you'll actually face. Because if you only practice on perfect flat asphalt, the first time you try it on a sloped road with traffic around you, the nerves come rushing back. And don't be afraid to drop the bike. Seriously. That's why parking lot practice is priceless. It gives you space to fail without consequence. Better to tip over at 3 miles per hour next to a plastic cone than to panic stall in the middle of an intersection with cars honking behind you. Here's the bottom line. U-turn confidence isn't about talent, it's about time. The riders who look like naturals, they've just put in the laps when nobody was watching. So if you want to kill that fear, take it to the lot, put in the practice, build the muscle memory. Because when the moment comes on the street, you'll be ready and you'll make it look easy. Now, here's what I'll tell you. Every rider struggles with U-turns at first. You're not alone. But this one weird trick, the clutch slip plus rear brake balance, is the difference between white knuckle panic and calm, confident control. It makes you look like a pro, even if you're brand new. So next time you roll into a parking lot, try it. Clutch, throttle, rear brake, eyes. It's weird. It feels wrong at first, but it'll change your riding forever. And if this video helped you out, do me a favor. Smash that like button so more riders can find this and stop fearing U-turns. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's your U-turn horror story? We've all got one. I'm Matthew. This is Autozium. Thanks for hanging out with me. Ride safe, ride smooth, and I'll see you in the next one.